Good afternoon, ABA CJS members. My name is Melba Pearson, and I'm proud to serve as your chair for the 2025-2026 bar year. And we are now having a series of discussions titled Inside the Section, where we get to dive into different aspects of what some of us may take for granted in the CJS, but want to make sure everybody has the same foundation and understanding of the various topics and work that we do in the section. So to that end, I have Professor Steve Saltzburg, who is a longtime member. He is literally the rock of the section. So just going to chat with him about resolution. So Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. Can you please introduce yourself to folks and share a little bit about your path to where you are in the section?
Sure. If I'm the rock, that means I'm probably about to fall to the bottom here.
No!
uh, the reality is, I've been a member of the section for more than 30 years. I've represented the section in the House of Delegates for more than 20 years, for a long time with my collaborator, Neil Sana. And I was chair of the section almost 20 years ago. The job that you now have. I love the section. I love what we do. And I've been proud of how many resolutions we've gotten through the House of Delegates, the policies that we've been able to lobby throughout the country. And I hope we can continue to add to that record.
Absolutely. So, you mentioned a resolution. So, can you break that down for us? What is a resolution and why is it so important for us at the ABA?
A resolution is a document that can be drafted by any member of the ABA, by any section, by any part of the ABA. It is submitted to the House of Delegates, which is the governing body of the ABA. And basically, the resolution is like a bill that goes through Congress. Once it's passed by the House of Delegates, for lack of a better term, it's the law of the ABA. And that is the ABA lobbyists, the Government Affairs Office. They can lobby Congress. They can lobby agencies. They can lobby state courts and state legislatures. It is essentially the policy that allows the ABA to be heard. And that's why it's so important.
And if I'm correct, my understanding is that the president of the ABA cannot, or any of really the ABA leadership cannot comment on issues that we don't have a policy for, right?
For the most part, that's right. There are certain emergency provisions where the Board of Governors can authorize some comment, but essentially, the ABA is constrained. If we don't have policy, essentially, we don't have anything to use as ammunition, whether it's with courts or legislatures, whether it's amicus briefs and the like. Our resolutions are our policy, and that's why they're so important.
So you mentioned it's kind of like I'm thinking back in the day, I'm only a bill sitting here on Capitol Hill. So can you kind of break down step by step what it means, basically from that ideation phase all the way to what happens when it's actually policy? Does it go in a book? Like, where can we find all of the official ABA policy? So if you could walk us step by step from beginning, from birth all the way to, fruition, I guess.
So there are two different kinds of resolutions. I'll give you one example. Back in 2003, I was appointed to head the ABA Justice Kennedy Commission. And we came up with 6 different resolutions to take to the House of Delegates. They were complicated. The report that we had was long. The House voted on each one. They all passed. But it was a monumental effort. In comparison, a group of us yesterday worked on a very short resolution that is one sentence essentially, and it urges state and local governments to take appropriate action when federal law enforcement officers exceed their authority and threaten the rights of individuals, those rights protected by state law, state constitutions, and the like. It's one sentence, and we're working on drafting a report that would back it up. When we whether it's a long one like the Kennedy Commission or a short one like the one we're working on, what will happen is we'll have a draft for, we have, in every draft, we have the black letter. That is all the House votes on. But we have a report that explains what the black letter is all about. Technically, the report is not ABA policy. Not technically. People read the report. They rely on it as like the legislative history of a resolution. So each of the resolutions gets submitted to a body called Rules and Calendar. Rules and Calendar is a committee that is appointed by the House of Delegates chair. And Rules and Calendar screens every resolution to try to make sure there's a consistency in the format, consistency in style, and that it is within the bounds of what is permissible for ABA resolutions. They often make suggestions, send them back. The drafters can consider their suggestions. Often they're very good, and then rewrite. And the resolutions then go to the floor of the House of Delegates, which meets so far twice a year. There's a mid-year meeting, which usually takes place in February, first week, sometimes last week of January. And then the annual meeting, which will take place somewhere between the last week of July and the first 2 weeks of August. And the House will consider each resolution that has been proposed to come before it. The voting is generally a majority vote, unless it's an ABA constitutional issue in which there's a 2/3 vote required for change. When resolutions pass, there are summary is issued by the ABA House of Delegates that goes out to all the House members, summarizing what the House did on any given day. Usually the meetings are either one day, Mondays, or Tuesdays, Monday and Tuesdays. So we, your delegates in the criminal justice section, try to circulate that summary to council members so that they know what happened last time the House of Delegates met. And then each resolution is placed in I can't tell you where it is, but placed in with the leaders of the ABA so that technically their resolutions are available to members and people can research and decide what the House of Delegates has done. Resolutions that are more than 10 years old are often put up for archiving. That is, a section is asked, do you still want to keep this alive? Most of the time we say yes to that. We want to keep it alive, but once in a while we'll say, no, that resolution is time barred, essentially. It's over. So that each of the resolutions that passes a given House of Delegates meeting is added to the vast number of other resolutions that constitute ABA policy.
And you mentioned council getting the summary, but what's council's role in terms of, before the resolution gets to House of Delegates, or does council have a say, and what does that look like?
The tradition of the CJS is to seek consensus. As most people in our section know, we try to be equal in numbers and representation. 1/3 prosecutors, 1/3 defense-oriented lawyers, and 1/3 we call others, which are academics and judges and other people involved in criminal justice who may be victims representatives, for example, victims advocates. And we try hard to have a balance. And when we consider a resolution at a council meeting, if we don't have a substantial consensus, doesn't mean we have to be unanimous, but if we don't have a substantial consensus, we often send it back for further work because we don't want to end up with resolutions that are so divisive that we lose some of our contributing council members who come out in the minority and don't think a resolution should go forward. Somehow or other, we are pretty good at finding consensus. And when we do find consensus, then the council is the sponsoring body that essentially puts a resolution before the House of Delegates.
And So first off, kind of like talking a little bit about the House of Delegates, is it open to all ABA members? And the second part of my question is, what's the atmosphere like? Is it giving you like British Parliament or is it giving you US Congress? Like, I'm almost envisioning like, contentious, like, debates type of thing. But can you share a little bit about that?
I can. Uh, anybody can, I think, can try to come in to a House of Delegates meeting. My wife comes and sits in regularly on House of Delegates meetings. So do some other spouses. Um, they often are registered though at meetings. So I'm not sure whether someone who's an ABA member but didn't register for a meeting and doesn't have a badge, whether they would get admitted or not. I've never addressed that question. A lot of the proceedings are broadcast or videotaped so they can be viewed later. And we, depending on the number of resolutions, so they can be anywhere from 25 to our last annual meeting, 60 resolutions. Some will be put on a consent calendar and will stay there. And the consent calendar will be voted on as a whole, unless somebody asks for a resolution to be removed and debated. And the debates, many times, there is no real debate, in which case people are very limited in the time they get to speak. But if there is true debate, I mean, we have had some knockdown, drag out fights on the floor of the House of Delegates. A lot of us like those because it reminds us that what we're doing is important and what we're doing ought to sometimes be controversial. Uh, Fortunately, I say knockdown, drag out. It's always civil. I don't remember pejorative words spoken about members, but the um, debate, if it heats up, the chair of the House of Delegates has a lot of discretion to limit how long people speak and the number of speakers on each side of a resolution. And we have a big body. It's about the same size of Congress. There are somewhere in the neighborhood of 550 or 60 members of the House of Delegates at any given time. Fortunately, not everybody has to speak.
I can imagine that would be kind of hectic. And these 550 delegates are throughout the ABA, right?
Yes, they are. They come from state bars, local bars. Actually, the sections have the smallest representation, even though the sections produce most of the resolutions.
So can resolutions then come from state bars as well?
Often come from state and local bars.
Mhm.
The sections, because we are at this all the time, whereas state and local bars have their own issues to deal with, not just ABA issues. Sections tend to dominate the number of resolutions, but we've had resolutions brought forward by an individual member of the House of Delegates. And once in a great while, we'll have a resolution in which the most of the speakers will have privileges of the floor. They're not actually House of Delegates members, but they have expertise in an area, and the House basically wants to hear them.
Okay. And so you talked a little bit about uh, the what a resolution looks like in terms of you've got black letter, which is basically whereas blah blah blah, and then you have the report that's attached. So if someone is like, "Wow, I'm inspired by what Steve has said, and I want to go and write a resolution." Where do you begin in terms of that? And where can you get assistance in terms of maybe a template or somebody to speak to so that you know that you're doing this correctly?
First thing that anybody in CJS should do is contract Patrice, who's sort of the guardian of the resolutions that are already passed, and ask her this question, which is, do we have policy already on this subject? Because if we do, we may not need a resolution. If we don't, then any member of the criminal justice section, whether you're on council or not, doesn't matter. Any member can propose a resolution, can draft it. What I've urged in the past is if they want to contact Wayne McKenzie, the other delegate, or myself, they should and tell us what's their idea. And we can talk to them about how do you translate that into ABA speak? How do you take your idea and put it into the kind of format that resembles our resolutions. It isn't that hard, but it saves people a lot of time. They don't have to spin their wheels if we give them a little heads up on the best way to go about doing it.
And so that's great advice, and that's Patrice Payne, who is on our staff, and she is absolutely amazing and is wonderful, and will happily walk you through the process. What are some recent resolutions from our section that kind of stand out to you?
Well, we've got a couple that came up at our last council meeting trying to breathe life into federal habeas corpus. And I think you get surprised sometimes. The drafters of the resolution said that we don't really have policy that recognizes the importance of the writ of habeas corpus in American criminal law. And they thought it was long overdue that we should have a stance, even though they fully recognized that the 1996 anti-terrorism and effective death penalty statute made it very difficult for people to actually successfully seek habeas corpus relief in federal court. But nonetheless, they felt it was important to talk about in a resolution how important historically it's been, and to at least lay groundwork for people who want to try and change the law a little bit and breathe life into the great writ, as habeas corpus is known.
Yeah, that's a good one. There was some that was actually some very interesting discussion about that at the council meeting. Is there anything else that you think members should know in terms about ABA policy, the resolution process, House of Delegates, any of that?
I think that no one should be discouraged from reaching out. Or let me put this a different way. All of us have different experiences in our criminal system. And sometimes the experiences are deflating and disappointing. And when that happens, if people reach out to Patrice Payne and they say, do we have policy in this area? And if we don't, then, and they think that we need policy because otherwise we don't have anything to lobby on, then the thing to do would be they can contact Wayne McKenzie, they can contact me, they can contact you, they can contact anybody basically who is in a leadership position on council, anybody who is in line to be a leader or has been a past leader, and just call and say, I got this idea. How do I go about seeing whether I can make this into something that the ABA can really benefit from? And we'll all work together to help people with ideas. We need more. Uh, Nobody should feel as though they're an island and that they're alone and that they have to do everything by themselves. We're a collaborative group, and we are willing to take our experience and use it for the benefit of other people who may be new at policymaking in the ABA.
And with that, Steve, that's an amazing point to end on. We are all here to serve as a resource. So definitely reach out to any of us in leadership if you want to advance an idea that's been lurking in your head. Let's get it out and put it on paper and make it ABA policy if needed. So definitely reach out if you have any questions. Professor Steve Saltzburg, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us inside the section. And thank you for your dedication and service to the section.
Thank you, Melba.
Take care, everyone.